to then realize that what I'd been doing was not in their best interests, and that it became a real struggle at that point to deal with that. Then the further I looked into medicine, I realized that not only was the problem with the swabs, the problem was essentially with everything. And then I was like, gosh, where does that leave me? And so I had to, that was my dark night of the soul.
Dr. Mark Edmond is a former Olympic athlete and was a popular family doctor for 18 years in Christchurch and Wanaka, New Zealand. In 2021, he gave up his career as a GP rather than being forced to take the COVID-19 jab, and spoke publicly about his decision. The medical council came after him and at one point even threatened criminal charges. He was horrified at the lack of pursuit of truth in science and achieved deregistration through the principles of equity. He now works as a holistic healthcare consultant, coaching people towards a life full of vigor with autonomy from the allopathic medical system. Mark is a brave, humble father of 5 and has a genuine passion for wanting to help others. Welcome, Mark. It is such a lovely honour to have you, a fellow New Zealander, on my channel with me. Thank you for agreeing to come on the channel.
Oh wow, my pleasure. Yeah, it really is my honor, because your videos have been a tower of strength for me. So over the past couple of years, so it's great. I'm pleased to be here.
Cool. Well, Mark, I think we should just start from the beginning, because I really wanted to learn and to share with the audience some about your background, because you were a bobsleigh competitor in the United States. Is that right? Can you tell me about your background with particularly with the sport?
I had been a 400-meter hurdler, and I was pretty keen on my athletics, and I had got as far as the World Junior Championships, and my goal was, I think, to get to the Olympics or the Commonwealth Games at least. And then I had some injury troubles when in trying to qualify for the Commonwealth Games, and I pretty much kind of had enough of it by then. Like it was one of those things where I would get to about 6 weeks out from the major meet, and then my hamstrings were usually the thing that gave out on me. And I got really frustrated, and I was like, okay, I'm going to have a break for a bit. And then I got a call from the driver for the New Zealand bobsled team. And he said, "Oh, Mark, I hear you having a little break. Feel like pushing bobsled for me?" And I was like, you know what? I think I will. And so that's where that's how I ended up in that gap.
Because is it true? So basically, most of the bobsled is it that you come from a sprinting background? Is that right? Or
yeah, that's really common. It's really common to come from an athletics background. You're looking for in a bobsledder, you're looking for power and speed, and so they're usually things that come out of athletics.
Because I have a wee picture of you. I think it's you, and it's got Alan Henderson and Mark Edmond competing in the 2-man bobsleigh event. And I wanted to know, what were you? Were you in the front or in the back?
I was the guy in the back.
Nice. You're 6'3", is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Are you still at your competition weight of 100 kgs or 220 pounds?
No, actually, no. I'm about 14 kgs less than that now. So there's and that's all muscle that's gone.
Mark, what was it like the first time you went in a bobsled?
When I first did it, I traveled all this way over to, it was actually in Salt Lake City. My first run was in Salt Lake City, but this was in '99. And I was at the top, and I just, in my mind, I had imagined it would be like a roller coaster, and that you'd kind of go down, it'd be fun, you'd be doing all this kind of stuff. And then I got, after the first run, and I just felt beaten up. Like, it was so brutal, and everything in the sled was hard, and you were getting flung around like it was it was kind of like being inside a shipping container that was rolling down a hill, kind of thing. That's kind of really what it felt like.
Really? Oh no.
Yeah. And I got to the bottom, and I just felt utterly exhausted and with the effort. And I had because there's a lot of G forces that happen in the turn, and in fact, and it's kind of -20 as well. And so, and like your nostril hairs freeze and stuff. So, but it's quite hard in the G forces. It's quite hard to keep the spit in your mouth. It sounds gross. Because you're bent down like this, and the G forces are going down this way, and then it's like your spit will freeze on the inside of your helmet, and it's like it's kind of crazy. And so at the end of the first round, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But luckily, it got better. I adjusted my expectations about what was happening. I also patted myself up a bit better. And
Yeah, so what do you wear?
Yeah.
Do you wear, is it like lycra, or is it like thermal stuff, or what's the
you wear lycra in the competitions, but in training, I used to just wear I had a big thick jumper and thick tracksuit pants, and I wore knee pads and elbow pads underneath that were kind of like essentially like volleyball kind of volleyball pads. And so yeah, and that was just to protect against because you get flung around to the side. And
like, I didn't think about so is it kind of like Cool Runnings, or is that really glamorized version of it?
Oh yeah, Cool Runnings is pretty similar to what goes on. It's a fairly good representation.
Yeah. I mean, it looks amazing, I have to say. It just, I think it would be quite just a thrilling thing to watch, actually.
Yeah, it is, it's like standing right next to the track as well, and the sled it's noisy, like, and it just comes rumbling past, and that's so, yeah, it's an exciting sport.
And especially because for New Zealand, we don't really go to the Winter Olympics. It's a very unusual. You did well, to even get there.
Yeah, well, yeah, true. Except that it's just probably not so well known, because we'd had a few guys that they'd been to the '88 Olympics in Calgary, and also the '98 Olympics, which was that was the Olympics my wife went to, actually, as well as the 2002, and so that's how.
Sorry, tell me. Because what did your wife do? You're like this amazing family of incredible athletes. What? Tell me about your wife. What did she do?
She was luge, so that's where you go feet first down the bobsled track on a sled, and so they go really fast too. Like I think they have the men's double luge. I think they go the fastest, like they go faster than the bobsled, so they've got less protection. Like, they're just like, yeah. So it's and then so she went to the '98 Olympics, and then requalified again for the 2002. And so with an even better qualification by that stage, she'd got a top 10 in the world.
But you guys met at the Olympics, did you?
Yeah, we met at a shadow team camp before the Olympics, and that was for those people that looked like they were going to qualify. And there was a get together and a kind of a inspirational kind of like, let's do this kind of thing. So,
well, for the viewers that don't know you, you're a medical doctor as well. So can you talk a little bit about so what you did in your training, or explain about that?
Yeah, I went straight from school into medical school, and then in the middle I took a break off to a year out to do athletics, and then I was back in for the final 3 years, and in the last year I delayed my graduation so that I could compete at Salt Lake City in the Olympics. And so I ended up graduating in 2002, but really finished very early in 2002. The rest of my class graduated at the end of 2001. I got a bit lost after that. I was doing the house surgeon years, and I was trying to work out what I wanted to do. Initially, I'd sort of got into medical school wanting to be a plastic surgeon, but I had to look around to see what the future kind of held for me as that. And while like the job seemed good, plastic surgeons seem to be working very long hours, and they seem to be very kind of stressed, and it just didn't really look like the kind of life that I wanted. And so then I was like, wow, now I'm not sure what I want to do. So I'd got a bit down on things, and so I had decided that maybe the problem was patients, and that I was having too much patient contact time. And so I sort of gravitated towards emergency medicine, and because that was essentially the least contact you had with patients, and so before you didn't see them again. But that just sort of made the problem worse. And then I was doing locums in Australia and around New Zealand, and my dad, who was a GP in Christchurch, he gave me a call and said that he was looking for someone to look after his practice while he was away in China for 4 weeks. And he was like, oh, why don't you come do it, Mark? And I was like, well, no, I can't be a GP. I haven't been a GP. And he's like, nah, there's nothing to it. And so eventually convinced me to do it. And it was excellent, actually, because I realized that I had it completely round the wrong way. It was the fact that I was seeing people just in isolation in the hospital, and it wasn't really getting to know who they were, or, they were more patients in the hospitals rather than real people. And in general practice, it was about real people. And so that's how I ended up doing general practice.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's really interesting, because you're very similar in the way I think a lot of doctors seem to suffer with that, where you're not like trying to find purpose and trying to find their place in it, and often you struggle. I know I did. Did you feel like that it sort of, did you always know that you wanted to be a doctor?
Yeah, I had very early on, but my dad had been a doctor as well, so I'm not quite sure whether that's just wanting to do what your dad does because you idolize him, and so or whether it was because it genuinely appealed. So I'm not quite sure, but then it changed after that, and then it wasn't until sort of I came towards the end of school, and I think in hindsight, maybe I probably got into it for the wrong reasons. I think I was looking for a career that was kind of stable and predictable. And so I've kind of messed that up now.
We can get into that a bit more soon, but yeah. I know what you mean.
So yeah, and then as a result, I think my expectations of what it was going to be like weren't quite the way it actually turned out, and then as a result, I found myself a little bit conflicted or a bit unsure about whether I'd gotten into the right thing or not.
And did you ever feel any pressure from your dad to do medicine, to study medicine, or not really?
No. Though he was when I was at the end of school and not quite sure what to do, he was like, "Well, you could try medicine. It served me well." So there wasn't any pressure to go into that, but there was the suggestion. So yeah.
You live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, where you've got scenes from Lord of the Rings are filmed there. And do you enjoy where you live down south in Wanaka? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty amazing actually how we sort of ended up here, because I had I had a general practice up I ended up taking over my dad's practice up in Christchurch. And so I ended up just cold calling down to Wanaka, because my wife and I had decided that when we got kind of shook up about the earthquakes in Christchurch, we were about sort of 4 years on past that. And our youngest daughter was just sort of getting to the age where she was about to start developing, long-term friendships and things like that. And we were like, well, if we're ever going to move anywhere, now's the time. And so we had to think about where we wanted to go, and we thought about Wanaka. And so we ended up I ended up cold calling Aspiring Medical Centre down here, and the timing was awesome. Like I can only say that God's grace was on that, because there was a person who had just left at that point, and they were like, oh, well, it's interesting that you've called now. And so I sent down my CV, and then I ended up getting a job as an associate down there.
Can you talk a little bit about your role as a doctor leading up to 2020? Because what I'm really interested in was, were you awake prior to 2020? Can you tell me a little bit about what your thoughts were with the system, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'd always had a kind of a natural medicine kind of persuasion, and also I didn't really like prescribing antibiotics. I didn't really think that seemed to be in the best interests of people, and so I'd really kept that to a minimum. Then I was pretty much mainstream, actually, other than that, except for when it came to vaccinating our kids. And I was probably pretty fast asleep, but my wife was not. And so she said, oh, I've got these concerns about the vaccinations. I think we should be getting vaccination. And I was like, it's fine, so I recommend it to everybody, but she wouldn't let it go. And then eventually she said, look, why don't you read this book here? And if you finish the book and you still think it's a good idea, then we'll just go ahead and do it. And so the book was Just a Little Prick. Have you come across that one? Yeah,
I've got it on my bookshelf. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you know the one. And I was a bit shaken up after reading that, because I was like, this is not nearly as clear cut as I've been led to believe. And so as a result, we stopped vaccinating, because that was just before my son was born.
So when is this? So, are you down in Wanaka by the stage, or are you practicing?
No, this is up in Christchurch. This is like, so Izzy was born in 2006. So this is sort of coming up 2008. And so, so when we didn't vaccinate after that, and then I sort of developed a reputation as somebody who was able to give a more balanced view as vaccinations go. And I tried not to push people in a certain direction, but I wanted to make sure that they had information from both sides, and then they could make the decision. And that followed me to Wanaka, actually. There were people who still sought me out because of that, and then I sort of developed the same reputation down in Wanaka. And then, so that was sort of 2013, I think, from memory, by the time I got down here. So then the whole story about, we'll come up with a vaccination for COVID, I was already quite suspicious about things by that stage. And so then, but again, it was my wife who really kind of pushed me and, kept me from just sort of going to sleep to the whole thing. And so, but then it was that letter from the medical council that came through that really kind of spurred me into action, because that was the one that said that we expect you to get vaccinated, and also that it's not appropriate for you to give anti-vaccination messages. And that I was like, well, A, where do you get off telling me what to do with my health? Because you're not my doctor. And also the second thing is, like, where do you get off telling me what I should do with my patients? And so then I was like, those nagging suspicions and the things that I have, thought something's not right there. That spurred me to actually go and follow that right back to the beginning, and that's where I found you actually. And so and it was this amazing thing where you realize that you're not alone, and that there is or that you're not like delusional, I guess, or
Yeah.
and it was great. It was so good. And I actually saw that again happen when we were a part of the convoy that went up from Bluff up to Wellington, that first one, and to see as we're driving through little towns, and there might be one or two people out on the road, sitting in a deck chair holding up a sign, or come to sit out on their farm fence, and to hear that they felt the same thing, that they realized that they weren't alone in this. And so it was, and it was such a relief for them. And so, yeah, it was a similar sort of thing from me, watching your videos and following your blogs and research and stuff.
Did you, when this is all happening and you're starting to have questions, what were your colleagues like? What was the kind of feeling that you got from other doctors?
Yeah, I started to question it and ask them, what do you think about this? But it really didn't. It never really got very far. Like, essentially, they got sick of me. Like, there would be a little bit of like, well, I think it's, because of this, like, where's the flu gone? Or like, why is this happening? There'd be a little bit of back and forth from one of my colleagues, a little bit of engagement, but then and then it was kind of like, no, like, I don't have the time for this. And the other comment I got was, look, I'm just happy being a robot GP. I don't want to do that was literally the comment. I don't really want to look into this any further. I just want to get on with my job and go home at the end of the day. So that was, yeah, it was that, so I was pretty much by myself in Wanaka in terms of that.
But you were lucky, it sounds like, too, to have such a supportive wife and someone who was so on board with your similar ideas. Had it always been like that with
yeah, absolutely. So lucky, because I've seen plenty of couples where it hasn't been the case, and it's really hard on them. And so
no, I completely. When did you join NZDSOS?
Pretty early on. I think it was, in fact, it was Matt Shelton who, when he started speaking out, and that kind of gave me the courage to actually go, I have to make a stand. I can't just be thinking all this stuff is wrong and yet not saying anything to anybody. And so Matt was a big inspiration for me as well, because he, like I said, he gave me the courage to do something.
So this is around 2021 we're talking about now?
Yeah.
Is it?
What happened then was the mandates came along, and then I was stood down from my job because I couldn't work any longer. So, and I was a partner at the medical centre by that stage. And so the Wanaka Sun wanted to interview me about that process. And so I decided that I was happy to do that, to kind of speak out and say what was going on. And so that caused a bit of furore. And so particularly, I think Wanaka Sun, said that it was the most traffic they'd had on their Facebook page in response to an article, I think, that ever. So it garnered a response from the Ministry of Health too. And then there was, so then the Wanaka Sun wanted me to do a follow-up to that, because the Ministry of Health was obviously pretty critical about some of the things that I'd said. And so I wrote a response to that as well. And so then the Medical Council weren't very happy about those two articles that appeared.
So what's happening at this point? So with the New Zealand Medical Council, have they given you any official warnings yet, or did it happen after the Wanaka Sun article?
Yeah, it didn't happen. That happened after the Wanaka Sun article.
And can you walk me through the process of because this is what happened to you, Mark, is pretty unbelievable, and and I think people need to know this is happening worldwide, but actually what happened in New Zealand to you.
Yeah, so then the Medical Council said that they'd had some complaints and that they were going to follow that up, and that they were concerned that I hadn't followed their good guidance statement.
The Medical Council say that they've got some complaints. Were these your patients, or are these randoms?
These are randoms.
Yeah, like me. And so are they these people that are offended about the Wanaka Sun article?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So basically they put you on this process with the Medical Council. I'm talking about putting you on the process to try and press charges. Is that correct?
Yeah, they were concerned about whether I was still fit to, not so much press charges, I don't think, was whether I was fit to, or that came later on actually, whether I was fit to practice. And so the thing that generated all this stuff that happened on Facebook for the Wanaka Sun was actually there were lots of people who were critical of what I'd said in the article, and then they got slammed by people who were supporting me essentially, and it gave other people a voice, and so they actually got far outnumbered on the Facebook page by the people supporting me as opposed to those that were against me. So that was quite interesting. That felt good too, actually. So they started this dialogue back and forth with me to start with, and so to say that they were going to convene a committee to put together, they were going to consider what was going on, they would keep me updated with the process, and then they said that they wanted me to sign this agreement. It's called a voluntary undertaking. But my voluntary undertaking said that I now needed to practice under supervision, which was kind of ironic. I had been a specialist general practitioner and a fellow of the college. Coming up to the last couple of years, I'd been a GP educator. So I had been the GP trainees that had been coming through had come to our practice, and I was looking after them. And so there was, but now I needed to practice under supervision. And so the other thing they said was that I wasn't allowed to talk about vaccinations to anybody, and that if people asked me about vaccinations, I needed to refer them to another doctor. I was not to discuss vaccinations with the media. They also said that at any stage that they could come and audit my notes and have a look at what was going on in my practice. And so there was a few other stipulations on the air, and so I was like, oh, there's no way I'm signing that. There's no way I'm giving away that power, for you to just like own me essentially.
Yes. Yeah, good on you. I know. And it's a shaming procedure, really, isn't it? It's basically saying you've been an educator for GPs, and now you have to have someone supervising you, and that you can't give advice just about vaccination. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd. And so from this point, when you were stood down from work and things, how what's happening for you? Because I mean, it's serious financial kind of hardship that when you can't, work anymore.
what happened? What were you doing at this point?
My work was very good about, while they didn't agree with what I was doing, they were supportive of the fact that that I was taking a different stance, but they were also probably pleased to distance themselves from my stance, which was causing quite a lot of trouble. And so we sort of came to the conclusion that it was probably best that at this stage there was no sign that the mandates would ever lift, and so we decided that it was probably in our mutual best interest that I sold out of the practice. And so we had predicted this was probably going to happen, and so we had made moves to sell our place back in June of that year, and then I got stood down around about in October. And so by that stage we had sold our house and moved to a place that has more land, and so that we could support ourselves, and it also had an accommodation business as well. And so we had made a sort of plan B sort of thing, and so that we were able to do that. And then plus selling out of the practice, that gave me a bit of financial liquidity to kind of to keep us going through that period of time.
Yeah, still, it's tough. I mean, really hard, and amazing for your wife, to continue to support these decisions. Because, I mean, again, people don't necessarily, when it comes down to money, this can be a huge cause a huge rift. So amazing.
Yeah. She's been totally amazing, and because to be honest, I kind of lost myself a bit after that, because it was mostly to do with the fact that I had invested by this stage 20 years in this career, and I was starting to have serious concerns about what that was all based on. And so I had been CBACs, the community-based assessment centres, when the COVID thing first came out, and in the clinic that we were doing there, where we were doing all the swabs for people that were coming through, there were children there that would have to be swabbed, and I had become good at that because I was able to gain the trust of these little humans, and to do the procedure in the least traumatic way possible for them. And so to then realize that what I'd been doing was not in their best interests, it became a real struggle at that point to deal with that. And then the further I looked into medicine, I realized that not only was the problem with the swabs, the problem was essentially with everything. And so then I was like, gosh, where does that leave me? And so I had to, that was my dark night of the soul, and to go through that process. And and my wife supported me through all of that, even though I don't think I was very easy to live with. I had started working with the vaccine engine and through the NZ DSOS clinic, and that was very rewarding. And then my annual practicing certificate came up for renewal, and I decided not to renew it because I was like, I can't continue to fund something that I don't believe in. And so I had actually got a registration with the Wakaminenga Health Council, which had just been newly developed. And at that stage, I was then practicing under that certificate. And so I had, with patients that had been ringing up through the clinic, and they were wanting support around mask mandates, and how they were struggling with masks. And so I would write support letters, and I had clearly put on the bottom of these letters that I was practicing under the Wakaminenga Health Council as opposed to the New Zealand Medical Council. Again, I got complaints, but this time it wasn't from the people I was writing the letters for. It was for the people who had had the letters served to them, essentially. Then the Medical Council thought that was me being fraudulent. And so they then said that they were reporting me to the police for fraud. So then I was just sitting waiting to see if anything came of that. By this stage, I had stopped engaging with them, and I think this was the same case for you, that it didn't prove to be a useful exercise to and to keep continuing conversation with them. And
Can
so
I just stop at this point, because I'm really fascinated by this. So what was your kind of, why was that? What did you do? Did you try and argue with them scientifically, and like what was the kind of interaction that you were having with the medical council?
So at this stage, I was writing to them and to say that no, I was not prepared to sign the voluntary undertaking, and that there was, and then I started to get some advice pretty early on that it was probably not in my best interest to engage with them. I had got advice from the Medical Protection Society to say that I should fully surrender everything and just go along with the process, and that was most likely to get the best outcome for me.
Your own indemnity lawyers are basically saying, do everything that the medical council say, don't fight it. This is the way that you save your career. Is that kind of, would that be fair? Or yeah,
that's exactly right. And so, and I was at this stage that did not sit well with me at all, and so I decided to seek help elsewhere, and so I ended up into looking at equity law, and at that stage the advice that I got given was not to engage in any dialogue, because essentially they're looking to try and get information that they can use against you later on. And it really just comes down to saying that you don't want to be that you'd like to be removed from the register, because at that stage I didn't want my annual practicing certificate or my registration. And so then
and so they're trying to press criminal charges against you because of the working legitimately under the Wakaminenga Health Council, which I understand is basically like in competition with the Medical Council of New Zealand. So the Medical Council don't like it.
Yes.
And what happened for you at this point? This must be a very dark time, Mark.
It was stressful, and I wish that I could have said that that I was able to stand in what I felt was right, and then as a result it didn't really matter what happened, because I knew what I was doing was right. I did stand in that place, but I still felt stressed. And so it was particularly given that nothing ever came from the fraud charges, and I don't even know if they ever sent anything to the police, or whether it was I'd applied for my my firearms license as well at that stage, and so it wasn't until and that was to do some hunting and stuff to provide food for the family, and it wasn't really until I got my firearms license that I realized that obviously the police were either decided that it was frivolous and vexatious, or that they never got anything sent to them, and so because they would have said something, or I wouldn't have been able to get my firearms license at that stage. So it wasn't really until then that I realized that okay, the kind of pressure's off, that there's not going to be someone going to be coming knocking on the door or serving me a summons to court. So.
Oh my goodness. And what happened after that? So the kind of, when did the light come?
Well, in this process, as I was going through, I had started to look to see what what my training had been based on wasn't right. What was right, and so it opened up all this area that I had really previously kind of dismissed, as not being scientific, and to realize that my profession is not scientific it was made me look at this other stuff afresh. And it was amazing to see all these different areas of health all pointing towards a very similar direction, and except for medicine, and which was pointing in a different direction. And that was very exciting for me to see that, there's something amazing that is going on with kind of health, and like almost a kind of an awakening. And so, and to be on the edge of that and learning about that, and that was really it became quite exciting. And so and at that point, then I needed to decide whether or not I was going to put myself out there again, or whether I would just maybe just be done with medicine, and so, or done with health. Like, I'd always done the safe things. Like, I had gone straight from school into medical school, and then in medical school everything's planned for you, and then you go straight from there into the hospital, and hospitals all organized what you're supposed to be doing and that sort of. And then I went to general practice, but even then that was like, I was working for my dad's practice, and so everything was really safe all the way along there, and the most unsafe thing I'd done up until that point was to apply for a job outside of the town where I was, so that was the level of risk that I was used to working with. And so, and now I was like, now I'm just like going completely pushing my butt into the deep water. So it was it was challenged my character.
So, because before we get to what you do now and everything, because I want to talk quite a bit about that, but I'd like to know. So you were taken. So one day you just discovered that you were taken off the register. Is that right?
Yeah, they actually notified me. I'd sent them 3 letters by this stage, and
these are equity notices.
Yeah, exactly. The last one was for tort damages, and to say that you have failed to comply with my directions, and you don't have standing in order to justify that, and so as a result you're now liable. And so at that point they had decided that they'd finished their investigations of me, and so they'd taken a long time by this point. Like, this had gone right through from, they started investigating me in about November, and it wasn't until August that they decided that they had, or September, somewhere around there, that they decided that they had reached the conclusion of what they had done, and they'd employed 5 people at this stage to look into it. I don't know how much money they spent on this, and then they decided that the letter I got was that to say that they had thought long and hard about sending me to the disciplinary tribunal to consideration of whether I should be subjected to a $10,000 fine. But they decided that they wouldn't do this in this case. But I should count myself lucky. And so it was just kind of like a smack on the hand. We don't approve of what you've done. And then so then they, at this stage, they then took another then 2 months to remove me from the register. And so, and then they even wrote a letter, an email to me to say, hey, just checking that you still want to be taken off the register. And so, which I didn't respond to. And so, and then they just took me off the register. At this stage, because the longer they take in equity, the longer they take to comply, the more it was going to cost them. And so I've been regularly taking screenshots to see whether or not they had complied with it at this stage. And so, so I think I noticed relatively quickly to see that like you said, I just disappeared off the register one day.
Mm. Yeah, very similar. And like Mark was the same, just taken off. It's not that you've been struck off or anything like that. They just one day remove you, and through the equity process, which apparently isn't supposed to work, but then it actually does. Yeah. So after this real huge awakening and revelation about our careers,
Yeah.
with medicine. So what happened then? Where are you now? Like, tell me about this journey, because this is exciting, what you're up to now.
Yeah. It's I'd realized when we, I don't know if you can identify with this, but when we went through medical school, very much the overwhelming impression is that, we're just sacks of chemicals, and that there's just a sort of a process that kind of goes on, and like it's all driven by your genes, and then and that's and then you'd regularly come under attack from the world and that sort of stuff. That's why you've got an immune system, and so to and that it's a very separate thing from anything to do with your spirit, or even your mind to a certain extent. I mean, as close as it kind of got in medical school was like the placebo effect or the nocebo effect, where they're saying that if you believe something will work, then yeah, it'll work. And so you kind of have that, your mind has that control over your body. But to realize that it was that there's far more to it than that, and that really the whole chemical processes are all really driven by the essence of your spirit. And so that we're primarily electromagnetic rather than chemical. And so that was an exciting thing to do. There were still people who were really keen to see me, and so they had felt lost and let down by the medical system in the same similar way to me. And so I was able to talk to those people and essentially kind of develop a new way of looking at their health, and that had a lot to do with finding out really what their story was, and that there was no coincidence that they were suffering from whatever they were at the time, and it was all related to how everything that was going on in their life and had been going on in their life for the last 10 years or so. And so it's very much about finding out the whole story about what's really going on with them, and what's happening in all these different areas of their life, and also to help them recognize that their body is trying to work with them in order to restore balance, rather than to that they've had just some sort of attack from the outside, or even worse, that they've been told that their body's attacking itself, and that it's and that that they're a bit dysfunctional as a result of that. And so it was, and to see the change that happens when people start partnering with themselves, and being grateful for that their body's trying to help them. And so it's because when you fight against yourself, like, not only is it a waste of energy, but it can be destructive. So and so that's a lot about what I do, but also to realize that the pharmaceuticals are not, as I've heard you say before, we don't suffer from a deficiency of pharmaceuticals. It's not like we're lacking that in our lives. And so it's to help them to get from that place where they're on pharmaceuticals to a place where they can get off that and to be independent with their health. And so and also to help them create lifestyle habits that shift them to keeping their independence in health, essentially for them to feel powerful about their health and about their life and what's happening, because so much of our the system in the hospital is about taking people's power away.
Yeah. Oh, Mark, it's amazing to hear you speak like this, because honestly, it's like it speaks to my soul, because it's just the parallels with what's happened to you is so similar to me, and a wake up and realizing what health is. And so you see patients now holistically. Do you see them only in person, or do you see them online? Like, do you see people from overseas? Because I can imagine I know I'll have a lot of people that will be wanting to seek out your services.
Yeah, cool. Yes, I'm happy to talk to people online and sort of do remote consultations. Obviously, that in person is always better, and it's kind of interesting, because that we have an accommodation business now as well, because it means that if that was really important to people, then they could come stay. And so it's just interesting how God works like that. And so, but because I think in person there's always this. There is a better connection and an aligning of your purpose. And so, and a little bit in some ways, like yawns are contagious, or it's that's a like a it's about the only contagion I believe in now. And
Love it. Yep.
but there is something in that that's like a resonance that happens, and I think that's much more likely to happen in person. But I still think it definitely happens remotely too. And so, and there's plenty of historical testimonies around that stuff. But so yes, in person and yes, online. Yeah.
Yeah. How would you describe your work now? Would you describe it, are you more of like working as almost like a naturopath, or do you have a term for it? Or because I know that you're also, I wanted to mention about aligned with Tom Cowan and the new biology paradigm.
Yes, been in discussions with Tom, and I've identified myself as a health consultant. And so that how am I different than a naturopath? What I bring is that I've got 20 years of diagnosis practice, essentially, in medicine. I'm very familiar with pharmaceuticals, and so that gives me an advantage, I guess, in terms of helping people get off those things. Know your enemy, if you like.
Yeah, I love it. It's like you're working on the good side now. It's the flip, and sorry, carry on. Yeah.
No, that's cool. And then the other thing is that because there are some things I think that are still useful in medicine, perhaps emergency medicine. If I have got an open skull fracture or something like that, then I still think I'm going to want to go to hospital. And so some people still need this hospital system, or at least until they can get out of it. And so, and being very familiar with that system, I can help them keep their power in that situation, because I've seen even people who feel powerful when they go in and they go, I'm gonna make sure that they hear what I need, even though they tell me they don't have enough time, and that I will get answers to my questions. And I still hear that they ended up getting railroaded into things that they don't want to do. And so I can help people keep their power in that situation. And because I think that is a lot of what helps people to get better is feeling powerful around their health.
Yeah, so true, Mark. Yeah, amazing. Another thing I was interested in did you feel like when you left medicine, essentially, because I know I did, I'll be honest, like with thinking about missing being able to prescribe, was that something that you thought about, or you'd like completely gotten over that by the time you were sort of not renewing your practicing certificate?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you put it like that, because I thought that I had got over it, but what's interesting is that I have picked up another modality as well, which is something called frequency specific microcurrent. It's about, we talked about the primarily electromagnetic before. It works with that, and so to help people. And so I think in some respects it has become a little bit of a substitute for prescribing, I think, on reflection. I'd never really thought about it until you mentioned it just then. But so I think I have probably replaced it with that. And I can tell you a bit more about microcurrent if you like.
Yeah, please. I don't know anything, so teach me. Tell me a bit about it. Yeah.
Microcurrents, this amazing thing that has been around actually for a long time, since the beginning of last century. And so it's actually tied up with the Flexner report, which I know you know a lot about, where and by the time there was lots of work that was being done with microcurrent. Microcurrent is using the same level of current that is present in your nerves. And so as it turns out, there's kind of a sweet spot between, 50 microamps and 500 microamps, which is, we're talking millionths of an amp here. So not enough for you to feel. That actually increases the available ATP, which I think traditionally that's regarded as the energy of the cell. Although I'm not convinced that that's the story anymore. And I think it probably has a lot more to do with helping proteins fold. But anyway, it is recognized as a thing that makes stuff happen in the body. And so if you can get in between that 50 and 500 microamps, you can increase the amount of ATP by 500%. And so and the frequency specific part about it is that different tissues in your body have different resonant frequencies. And so if you think about an opera singer who can sing a note and shatter a glass, they're transmitting the energy from their voice into the glass, and the glass vibrates and eventually breaks itself. And so that if different tissues have different resonant frequencies and you tune to that particular frequency, then you can create a peak of resonance at a point that is got a bit of a blockage or something's kind of stuck, and so say you've got nerve irritation from a case of shingles or something like that. And so then you can, if you get the resonant frequency for nerve and you get the resonant frequency for inflammation, and then you combine those two things, then any nerve in the circuit that is got inflamed will get this big peak of resonance there. And it's like performing miracles. Like you can just transform people's pain. And so there was a lady came in, saw me, she'd had pain in her hip bursa for 12 years. And then in 4 minutes, it got rid of it.
Wow. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
so is it mostly used for pain, or it also it's like for neuropathies and things, or can you use it for, or what can you
it can support lots of different conditions. It can help with anything from supposedly autoimmune conditions through to things like post-traumatic stress disorder. But it seems to work most spectacularly with nerve problems, and so which kind of makes sense because they're the ones that are that have the current flowing through them at least to the most degree.
Tell me too about the Flexner report with regards to the what do you call it? The micro.
Yeah, frequency specific microcurrent. Yeah. Okay. The Flexner report was kind of like the setup kind of thing, where they kind of like made this report about, how, pharmaceuticals and surgeries was the way to go. And then it was, and everything else was quackery. And no one kind of really paid that much attention to it at the time because they were kind of like, yeah, whatever. But then the American Medical Association got infiltrated essentially in the medical schools. Then suddenly they could then refer back to that, and so frequency specific microcurrent became illegal. Well, essentially illegal. You would lose your license if you were caught using it back then, and so that. Most of the machines got destroyed at that point, and a lot of the research that had been done was destroyed. And so and then there was just a few machines that kind of made it through. And so I learnt off a lady called Carolyn Mackin, and she had got it through from an osteopath called Harry Van Gelder. That's how it sort of kind of made it through into the kind of late 1980s when Carolyn picked it up. Because a lot of these things get squashed, if they're a threat to pharmaceuticals or a threat to surgery, or particularly if they're a threat to cancer treatments, then they'll get squashed. We want to do publish as much research as we can about it, and also train as many people as we can in it, so that when eventually it does stick its head up, that there is it's too difficult to stop because of this of the number of people that are trained, and also of the publications. And so
that sounds great. Because how did you find out about this? Like, how did you learn about it?
So
like, know about it.
So again, it's my wife. I've got a lot to be grateful for. We'd been looking at things like biofield tuning and to do with this kind of electromagnetism and stuff and so it had and I was actually all set to go down like the biofield tuning thing first, and Ange said, look, mate, you should really look into this microcurrent thing. So I read Carolyn's book, and there was enough, I guess, testimonies in there, and she seemed very genuine in her approach, that I decided that it was actually, there was enough in there to make me think, I should take this seriously, and I should have a look into it.
Yeah. So talking about your website, so what is your website called?
It's thegooddoc.co.nz.
I love it. I love it for the name alone. Brilliant. Cool. Thegooddoc.co.nz.
Yes.
Cool. The other thing I wanted to ask you about too was your dad, because this is just making me interested. So is your dad still with us and alive?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
How has he felt about everything that's happened to you? You know, been in general practice for a long time, and in maybe the good old days. What has he thought about everything?
Yeah, so he's struggled with my my position. It's as you're kind of aware, like fear is this powerful thing that they leverage people with, and so there's no doubt as you get older, you feel more vulnerable, and so I think he struggled with the fact that he saw I was doing was risky kind of behavior. It was risky in terms of, like, they were offering this solution in the form of vaccination. Or why would you risk doing something else? Also risky as in, like, you've got this stable career, and now you seem to be like giving it all away, and so and that maybe this is one of those things that you should just put up with, and just take one for the team, just so that to kind of smooth the road. And so we didn't really see eye to eye on that, and so it's and I kind of struggled with that, because he was always somebody who had a bit of a natural persuasion anyway, and so to not have that connection over that anymore, that was a bit tough for me. And so he's now that the fear is less of a problem, and our frontal lobe kind of switches off in fear-based situations, and we lose our critical thinking, and so that we can talk much more easily about it now than we used to, given that there's sort of less fear around, more for the meantime anyway. So
I know it is really hard. I can imagine for both sides, actually. Just, he loves you and wants, in some ways wants the best for you, but sometimes what he thinks is the best is the worst. Do you, looking back on everything that's happened, is there anything that you would have done differently, or I don't know, just in hindsight, just reflected back on with?
That's a great question, Sam. It's one of those things that I think that you often hear people say, it was a really good thing that I went through it, but I wouldn't want to do it again. it's a bit like that, because I've learned so much about myself in the process, and also all this new stuff about health. And if I was going through the process again, I would have handled things differently, especially around how I managed myself during the dark times, and the effect that had on my family, but at the same time, I'm not sure I could have learnt these lessons any other way. And so I don't begrudge what happened. And I feel wiser and stronger for it.
I'm like so proud of you. I just want to give you a big hug and say, yeah, I think you're awesome. It's amazing what you've done. Mark, yeah, I really feel that I know in the times where you're tested, you can't see your way through, but like you, I think COVID and everything that happened was the greatest blessing for me and Mark. We wouldn't be living on a rural property now. Our lives would be so different, and I certainly wouldn't understand health like you. I think it's just through the darkness you really can kind of see. And did you find that it makes you stronger, like makes you more resilient?
Yeah, it's absolutely, like, but I also look back on how weak I was, and so insofar as that, like, I was just really prepared to kind of go along with things, and I was prepared, just sort of generally take the easiest route. And it wasn't until the crunch came that I thought, oh gosh, I actually need to make a stand here. And then that's kind of changed my approach really to life in general, in that I need to spend time thinking about what it is, who I am, and what it is that I do, and what I'm prepared to tolerate and what I'm not prepared to tolerate, where my boundaries are. And so that makes me a lot harder to mess with. and that definitely makes me a stronger person.
Yeah, for sure. And I look at it too with what you're doing now. It's the greatest threat to allopathic medicine, really, because you've been on the inside. you know all the rules and how it works, and you can use it, for your own, for people, and to really help and do amazing work. And I really encourage people to go and check out your website and to have a look at what you've been doing, because it's, like I say, really amazing. So is there anything else that you'd like to talk about or say?
Again, like I said at the start, that you guys are an inspiration to me, and working as a husband and wife team, and going and out there and just taking it right down to the bottom of the rabbit hole as far as you can go. And so I love that about you guys, and I hope you continue to keep going, because you're an inspiration.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Oh, I feel like this is for us, both Mark and I, it's been this journey, but equally it's made us, I think, like you, better people. And I like the challenge of all of what's happened. And I like being a thorn in the side to the medical council. I'm quite hoping that I keep on the register just so that I can keep hassling them.
I like it.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time, Mark. And I'll put all the links for where people can follow your work and potentially come and see you in the description. And I just want to say, may God bless your family. It's amazing what you've done.
Thanks, Sam. Likewise.
If you enjoyed this video, please visit supportdrsam.com